the models within each category. We're going to review the changes that are made to the applications, and we'll review category 1 and 2 application and also go through the category 4 type 1 application. So if you weren't able to attend last week, the application categories have changed slightly. So we have a category 1 and 2 that have not changed. The category 3 is now a type 1, that's just the tilt, and a type 2, that's tilt and recline. Category 4, type 1, we're reviewing today, and it's a full-time user. And the category 4, type 2 will be reviewed next week. Category 5 is also split into 2 types. One is power alone, and the other is power with actuators. The categories of the equipment is also sorted into the models. So we have our model A is adult, B, heavy duty, C, pediatric, and D, bariatric. Here's a brief overview of the contract equipment and how it would fall into each category. Today, we're going to be looking at the category 1 and 2 equipment, as well as the category 4 type 1 equipment. So Cherry touched a little on this last week. The general changes that were made to the applications would include that all applications are consistent in flow and format. The emergency contact can be noted as the primary contact. The emergency contact does not have to be a Manitoba resident. More space has been provided for responses, and all applications will have a supplementary guide available on the website to guide clinicians in filling out the applications. The supplementary guide is going to be based off of these presentations and are also going to include an example with a completed application. And coming soon are fillable PDF application forms. We keep saying it, but it's happening. I'm working on it. So now I'm going to hand it over to Jenna. She's going to go over the category 1-2 application form.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to start with the most simple application first, which is your category 1 and 2. I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures of the new kind of chairs on the category for the category 2 applications. So your Drive Cruise X4 is a new on-contract chair for your category 2 type A. The Drive Wallaby is your category 2 type C. And then we have 2 Sentra chairs available for your B and D options. So if we jump right into the first section of your category 1 and 2 application form, there is now a new second address line. So some rural clients have different mailing addresses than their physical address. And we do require both because there's times where we're going to have service technicians going to the client's home, but we also send out letters, parts, wheelchairs via Canada Post as well. So we do need to have both addresses. If your client doesn't have 2 addresses, just strike that one out and we'll leave it as the one. If you want to give me another arrow there, Kyla. So an email address. If you provide an email address, we're going to be using it for general communication for equipment such as delivery, repairs, maintenance, and pickups. We'll never send out any personal health information if you include an email address. If the client is in the process of being paneled or is already in a personal care home, they're only eligible to access the program through EIA/DHSU. And as such, we do require their EIA number to help process their application. Delivery. So you can obviously select the home address, and then the other option is a different delivery location. So that would include places like a hospital, a vendor, work. Just keep in mind that the client needs to be able to transport the wheelchair back to their homes if you do pick a different delivery location, as we only deliver to one location. Emergency contact is now replacing the next of kin section on the application forms. And we do have 2 new checkboxes there at the top. So the first checkbox you can select if the emergency contact is your main contact for your client. This may be due to several factors, like if your client has dementia or memory difficulties, if they have difficulty communicating, if via phone or written communication, or if it's a minor, a child, that sort of thing. To reduce the time filling out the application, the other checkbox is if your emergency contact resides with your client, so you don't have to write it out twice anymore. And then another point to note is that the emergency contact is no longer required to be a Manitoba resident, but you do need to make sure that emergency contact can make the necessary arrangements for your client for the equipment loans. For some factors, as Sherry mentioned last week, we do need a medical diagnosis that's recognized by Manitoba Health. It can't be old things like old age or fragility. The diagnosis should be relevant to the need for a wheelchair as well. So, for example, you could put in like CHF, COPD for this kind of category of chair. Even though we are only requesting these body measurements, completing a full MAT assessment is recommended to capture all your client's seating needs. Current functional status. So this is the section where you would explain how their diagnosis affects their abilities to complete ADLs, such as, if they had something like right-sided paralysis and how that would affect them and their ability to complete ADLs. Equipment information. Just to note on the exchanges that they will not be accepted within the first 6 months of an original request. And you can refer to the operating procedures manual for more details on exchanges. There is 3 different types of processing. So there's standard processing, palliative, and urgent for this category. Kyle is going to go more into details on the urgent criteria later, but if you have any questions, just refer to the operating procedures manual again. So there's 2 separate kind of categories you can select here. So on the left side, there's category 1. On the right side, there's category 2. And then you would just check off the boxes that make the most sense for your client. Category 1 will receive an appropriate recycled option based on the requested specs. So the model is determined by the Manitoba Wheelchair Program. Category 2 equipment is split into the models as we described before. So Model A is adult, Model B is your heavy duty, Model C is pediatric, and Model D is your bariatric options.
We have a question here. How does ADL independence impact eligibility for the for a wheelchair? Sherry, do you want to talk on that?
This is for the category 1 chair, correct?
1, 2.
Category 2. Yeah. That's probably not applicable on this, but it does get looked at. Oh, a 4-1. Yeah. Okay. We can talk about the 4-1 in a bit when you guys are in that. Do you want to answer that later? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay.
So yeah, you'll table that question in a minute.
Okay, we'll table it and we'll kind of move on. So wheelchair parameters, the parameters that are listed on the CAT 1-2 application form are typically are the specs for the Model A and B chairs. So if you're looking at a Model C and D, you will need to fill out an order form for those chairs. All items marked with an asterisk require justification in the section to the right. And then if you feel your client requires a lap belt, please refer to the operating manual for eligibility for this criteria of application. Okay, and then the last section for CAT 1-2 is your prescriber information. So this is just to cue prescribers to have a discussion with your client to ensure that they aren't eligible through another program. So you make sure that they don't have WCB, MPI, or victim services, or are award of child and family services. As usual, you have to review the equipment loan agreement with your client or the representative and make sure that they understand the terms of the wheelchair loan. And then the other thing is here is, even though we don't require a home visit, we do recommend at least having a conversation about their home environment. So a home visit isn't required for CAT 1-2. And Then the last little bit here is on each page of the application form at the very bottom is a little space to put the client's first name and last initial, so that we make sure that we get all the pages that we require, and it's the same application form throughout.
All right, there is one more question. Just curious why the alternative contact address is necessary when they no longer have to be a Manitoba resident. Could just a phone number suffice? Phone numbers change. So, and I know we also use email for contact. So I think just the more contact information, the better. Yes, primarily we will use a phone number, but having more information just in case there is changes, we just need to make sure we can get contact for somebody. So that would be why we're requesting more information.
We do also sometimes send letters. So if we can't get hold of that contact person through phone or email, then letters is something we need to send out.
All right, so we're going to continue on to our category 4 type 1 application. So this is one of our new categories. It was previously the category 2C equipment. So for the sake of time, we're not going to review the client information again because it is the same as what Jenna just reviewed with you for the category 1 and 2 applications. And we're going to start with the functional status section of the application. So once again, please explain the functional limitations of your client pertaining to mobility. So we need the information of why your client requires the wheelchair. For this category of wheelchair, a MAT assessment should be completed. So provide the relevant details from your assessment in this section. And identify any barriers or factors that will influence your client's ability to sit in and functionally use the wheelchair. So we would just strike out this section or write none or NA on the lines if it's not applicable to your client. Don't check no or unknown if they do not have a wheelchair. This section helps us to identify the client's current equipment and understand why the equipment may need to be exchanged, and explain any changes to either the equipment or the client that has resulted in the need for a new wheelchair. Explain how your client will benefit from a new wheelchair. What will the client use the wheelchair for beyond propelling? And estimate how long the client will be up in the wheelchair each day. Just remember that a full-time user is considered 6 or more hours in a day. Sorry, back one, there we go. And the home assessment is recommended, but not required. So discuss the home environment with your client and or their family to identify any barriers that may impact the use of the wheelchair in their home. So as per the operating procedures manual, the program does not automatically exchange or replace wheelchairs after a period of time has elapsed. So the clients must continue to meet the eligibility criteria of the requested category of a wheelchair. And exchanges will not be considered if the request comes within 6 months of the original request without reasonable or sufficient justification. Refer to the operating procedures manual on the website for more details on exchanges. Urgent in the operating procedures manual is defined as imminent client safety or risk of complication to the client, which can only be mitigated with provision or repair of a wheelchair. This could include a client who is in the hospital and requires a wheelchair for discharge, a client who is at high risk of hospitalization without a wheelchair, or a client who is a full-time wheelchair user and the wheelchair is unsafe for use. Once again, look at the operating procedures manual to ensure that your client does meet the urgent criteria. An equipment trial is strongly recommended. If you do not have access to the appropriate trial equipment, contact the Manitoba Wheelchair Program prescribers or rural OTs to book a trial for your client. So the category 4 equipment is split into the models, and on the contract information for each equipment the on-contract equipment information will be listed on each application. So Model A is Move, Model B is Move HD, Model C is Zippy GS, and Model D is the Quickie M6. This section is only required for urgent requests. All other applications do not need to complete it, as you will be completing an order form for your requested wheelchair. Check off the box if you're attaching an order form. For urgent requests, you may wish to refer to the order forms for additional details to help you determine the appropriate parts your client might need. For example, the Move order form has the seat to floor height chart to help you look at the wheel size and caster size to attain the required seat to floor heights. You'll notice that not all the models will match the wheelchair parameters in the urgent requests section. So the specs provided are based on the contract Model A and B equipment. Model C and D, you need to refer to the order form on the website and complete it if needed. All items marked with an asterisk require justification in the section below. I didn't include a picture of the section. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's an open box for open dialogue on why your client requires certain accessories for their wheelchair. So have a discussion with your client and or the representative. If the client is eligible for third-party funding, they are not eligible for our program. Best practices to follow up with the client after the wheelchair has arrived. We understand this might not be you and it might be a colleague, but follow-up should still be occurring. And this is a new addition to our applications. These checkboxes are included to provide the following information to our program. It'll help us identify education topics. It'll cue the clinical specialist to follow up with prescribers if support is required. And it will also cue the clinical specialist that the application has already been reviewed with a program OT. Review the list of additional documents at the end of the application. Ensure that both you and your client have read, understood, and signed the appropriate forms, and they're included. And finally, ensure that you have your client's first name and last initial at the bottom of each page where it's requested. So submitting the applications, the process is still the same. Fax in the application or mail in the application. The address and fax number are at the header of the application forms. Please remember, do not email in applications. If you have any questions about an application submitted, please wait at least 4 weeks before reaching out to the Manitoba Wheelchair Program prescriber or the rural OTs. All application processing times will vary, and refer to the operating procedure manual for more details regarding processing timeframes. We appreciate your patience as we are going through this process. So we can stop the recording now and we can open up to questions. And there's quite a few in the chat, hey?